Welcome to Larry
Okay.
the Alchemist, and welcome to Dudes Talking Metal. We haven't done a Dudes Talking Metal in quite some time. We've all had some stuff going on. Mike, are you fully recovered from the World Series, the Brewers and the World Series? I don't know. We you
Well,
had that going on,
you
and
mean the lack of a World Series
yeah,
again?
the
Yeah,
playoffs leading up to the World Series.
yeah, we got smoked, and the Cubs fans around here just refuse to let us forget about it.
I don't even
So
follow. I don't follow baseball. Is the World Series even done, or is it still going
that's
on?
we're 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 two two games games in,
going.
tied up,
So the Dodgers and who else?
and the Toronto Blue Jays one
Oh
game
yeah.
apiece.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Okay.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
know.
All right. Well, from for the sake of heaviness, we have Mike, we have Butch, and we have Tony from Tony Dio's Metal Emporium joining us here for our Dudes Talking Metal. We had Tony on last week, but the Dudes rule book, Rule 17-C, states you need three or more dudes for it to officially be Dudes Talking Metal.
You need a dude quorum.
Yeah. And hey, we follow the rule book here at Dudes Talking Metal. We play it by the book here. So last week we just called it a Lair the Alchemist episode, but we're here and we're going to be giving you three bands that we feel are criminally underrated, bands that people don't talk about enough, or maybe they don't talk about them at all. I think some of my picks, like people are going to recognize them, but they're bands that why aren't they more popular? Why aren't more people talking about them? They're everybody knows these bands. You think to yourself, how is this band not more popular? So that's our topic for today. So Mike, why don't you get us started here with your first pick for a criminally underrated band?
All right, I feel like these guys. I mean, I think they're known, but I think that they just get ignored where I feel like they should be in the conversation all of the time, especially within the last 10 years where we've really had that resurgence of, the new wave of traditional heavy metal. I feel like these guys were really at the forefront and really brought things, into perspective. Plus, it's just catchy as hell. But talking about Cauldron, I love, love, love this band. And, Cauldron came out of the ashes of Goat Horn, and Goat Horn was a little bit more on the doomy side, and then they kind of switched things up a little bit, and Cauldron was born. And man, just good traditional heavy metal, great riffs, great licks, choruses. I mean, you're singing this stuff all the time. And they've got 5 studio albums out, and every single one of those albums is just catchy as hell. You can't help but once you get into it, you're just singing it all day long. You got it in the car, you're rocking out. But I mean, like Chained Up in Chains and Tears of Calm, Nightbreaker, every one of those, and they had some pretty good publicity. They did some pretty cool videos too, and they're all, they take themselves very, tongue in cheek, but they wear the metal on the sleeve.
Mhm.
And they went out and they've done numerous tours, and I've seen them a couple of times. Had the pleasure of booking them once. We had Jason and Ian on for the sake of heaviness. Just really awesome, awesome guys. But I feel that they should absolutely be in the conversation like all the time when we talk about this so-called new wave of traditional heavy metal, because they were right there from the beginning. And I think they paved the way for a lot of the bands that followed. Like Enforcer, and you can
Yeah.
go down the gambit of them. So that's my first pick. I really, really wish people would pay more attention to Cauldron. And if you haven't, you should. And I guarantee you will be so satisfied with everything you find in that catalog.
Nice.
Yeah,
When did their
they're a great
first
band.
when did their
Yeah.
first record come out? Do you know?
I'd have to go back and look. I want to sing O2 maybe. I'm probably
Yeah,
Well,
early
way off.
that would have been
2000s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Goat
Goathorn was
actually,
around
Goat
O2.
Horn was early 2000s. Cauldron was a little later. It was probably
Okay.
around maybe 2005 or something. Because
Yep.
I met those guys at one of the Brave Words Bloody Knuckles Fest
Sure. Yep.
in Cleveland. And that's when they were Goat Horn. And,
Hmm.
they hooked me up with some CDs and stuff. We kept saying, got to bring you down here to play a show and stuff. And they eventually, once they became Cauldron, they started coming down. I booked them on
Yeah.
a couple of shows in North Carolina. And yeah, just cool dudes, good
Very.
songs. Yeah. Yeah, we had this whole thing where since they're only when they were goat horn, they only had the one horn. When we put a metal sign, we just did this, you know.
That's funny.
But I think they're doing a goat horn reunion. I believe at Hell's Heroes this year, possibly.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
I think
they
they
were
are.
actually, I think they were booked to do that like 2, maybe 3 years ago, and something happened, and I think actually Cauldron ended up doing that. So now it's available to where Goat Horn can, so they're jumping back on there this coming fest.
Cool.
yeah.
All right, Butch, what do you got?
Well, let's start with these guys. Um, Man, I know people know who they are. But again, like Mike, I just can't believe like these dudes are gigantic. We all see the bands that become really popular in the scene, and I'm not going to take anything away from any other band. There's a ton of great bands out there, but I still can't get past me why the Lord Weird Slowfeg isn't one of
Mm,
the biggest bands in the world. Now, I mean, I get it. Scalzi's got a unique voice. I mean, no one sounds like. I mean, that's one of the things that I think should be working for these guys. They don't sound like anyone else. You can hear some of their influences coming through, but they really have their own vibe at this point. I mean, yeah, you can hear Maiden, you can hear Thin Lizzy, and Mike's got a unique voice. I mean, same with the work he did with Hammers of Misfortune. Like he's real distinct. I think their stuff is really distinctive. It's every one of their records is well written. Um, Man, the playing it will, spin your head around sometimes. Tons of great double guitar work. There's, if you like classic metal and you like things like double guitar work and you like epic metal, and I just don't I can't and there's a little bit of doom, there's little bits of
yeah.
pieces of things thrown in, and I just can't get I feel like there's a class of bands that kind of got lost in the mix between these guys started around 1990, I think was like the first demo. I think there's a bunch of bands that kind of got lost before in between, like when metal kind of faded a little bit in the early 90s, and then this new wave of traditional heavy metal kind of surged. I mean, there's bands that I don't think get the credit that they deserve, while bands are kind of leapfrogging them, like Slow Fag or Twisted Tower Dire or bands like that kind of fell
Yeah.
in between, that were there in the all through the 2000s. While Heaven Wept is
Almost if
another
they had
one.
come out a little bit later, it might have
Hmm.
benefited them a little bit better. They would have been in the new wave of traditional heavy
Yeah.
metal. They would have rode that a little bit more. But yeah, you're right. They did the timing.
Yeah, and one of the I guess it's one of the things, we're at the point now where it used to be you could pinpoint things about a band. Well, they didn't tour, they don't tour enough, or and a lot of times that's still the case. But in a day and age where a band could put out a demo, like not even like a whole demo, but like two songs sometimes, and it'll like take off, and there will be a feeding frenzy over the band. Like it's and bands like are getting big and big word of mouth before their records are even coming out anymore. I just don't get, like, there's just a class of bands like, and this is like has been one of my favorite bands for years. They're an insta buy for me. This is Traveler. They just put out the second, like another part to this. Every Like I said, every one of their records is totally killer. I mean, you can't really go wrong with them. They're great live. Mike's a great frontman, really interesting singer. So yeah, I mean, if you haven't checked these dudes out, you need to do it. And I know that they get to tour, they play festivals and stuff, but they should be headliners as far as I'm concerned. I mean, these guys should be big.
I hate to say it. I think the name it doesn't, I'm not sure if their name helps.
It
I
certainly doesn't
think
do
it's
them
a
any.
cool name, but I think that I know, before I heard them, I had heard their name and I wasn't sure what it was going to be. I wasn't sure what to make of it. Whereas when you hear a name like Cauldron, you're pretty much, oh yeah, baby, get the spiked
Yeah.
wristbands out. Let's go. And their covers are cool. I like them, but they're a very unique band. The name is very unique. Their covers stand out from a lot of the other bands that are kicking around in that doom slash traditional metal type of thing. So unfortunately, I think that, and didn't they just call themselves Slogfeg
They
too for a
differ.
certain?
Yeah, there
Yeah,
was a
for a while
period.
they just went by Slowfag, and then they went back to.
Yeah.
I think they did a handful of records as Slowfag, and they went back to Lord Weird Slowfag. So I guess there's a little not I don't know how much confusion that would cause, but it's a little bit weird when I think even on Spotify the catalog is split up. I think some
Mm.
of it's under L and some of it's under Lord Weird Slowfag and some of it's under Slowfag. So
Yeah.
No, yeah, they're great. And I love that singer, man. He's got such
uh
a husky, like baritone type of voice with so much like power to it and everything. Reminds me a little bit of like, and they have a groove to them a little bit,
yeah.
maybe not too far removed from Clutch,
Yep.
that kind of like groove. They can lock into a groove, but they've got the dual guitar Thin Lizzy thing going on. And
Well, he too, like he's first of all, I think pretty sure he's a professor of philosophy out in California, and the dude is super smart, and his lyrics are always
yeah,
they're always a little bit different than what they're not just writing about headbanging and stuff, which is fine. But I'm just saying for them, like there's always like some unique thing. And just a real quick story about we played a show with them we played the Ale Horn of Power with them back in like 2012 in Chicago, something like that. And I always say I made the mistake of asking him afterwards. They had played a cover of now I'm it's they played a Thin Lizzy song, and of course I'm spacing on the song title. Anyway, I asked him afterwards. I'm like, hey, what's your favorite Thin Lizzy song? And I swear to God, I never felt so stupid in my life. He just looked at me and said, he's like, well, they're not really that kind of band, are they? And he meant like because
yeah.
they're all over the map. I mean, how are you going to pick? I'll bet you I told this story here before, which it means I'm boring everyone, but it's like, you could go with Emerald or you could go with,
Yeah.
um, Dancing in the Moonlight or
Right.
Chinatown or what, back the Rock or whatever. I mean, they're all over the place. So anyway, it was like this. I was like, oh, I wish I hadn't asked this. He wasn't a dick about it. It was just like, it was just like one of those things like, yeah, I never thought about it that way.
All right, Tony, what do you got for your pick?
Kind of in the same realm as the first two picks here. Speaking of which, I just checked out of curiosity. The first Cauldron EP, Into the Cauldron, was 2007.
Okay,
Okay.
I was a little off
Yep.
there. Yeah, I think I was going back to the goat horn.
To
So
Go Horn, yeah.
yeah.
I'm gonna go with a band from Northern Virginia, Twisted Tower Dire. Just these guys, just it blows me away that they are just not a bigger band because they were part of that first, or they were the first wave of traditional U.S. heavy metal, power
Hmm.
metal that came back. These guys were playing traditional style heavy metal at a time when nobody else was doing it hardly at all. And they came and played in North Carolina in I guess it was late 90s. And someone said, you got to go see this band, Twisted Tower Dire. And I'm like, once again, we go back to what you guys just mentioned with Slough. The name is kind of hard it doesn't
Yeah.
ring a bell. I've had people ask me, what's the name of that band again? Twisted Trucker Driver and stuff. Just they get the name all mixed up. And it is a very unique name. So a lot of people just call them TTD. It's just the initials, and that's great. But great, like I said, great band. They did set. I think they formed in Northern Virginia, and then eventually they were kind of based out of North Carolina, where I live. But they started out in '96, and they did some demos and various little splits and stuff like that. First album was The Curse of Twisted Tower, which is 1999 was that record. And they came back a few years later was the Isle of the Hydra, 2001. This is the one that really locked me in and made me a fan. I played this album to death when I got it. But then in 2003, they released The Crest of the Martyrs. And this one was produced by Pete from the band Iron Savior. And I'll go on record to say I think this is one of the greatest power metal albums ever. It's just an incredible record. This should have been the record that made them a household name like all these other power bands that were coming out at this time, like Iced Earth and Hammerfall and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I feel like if this had been on Nuclear Blast and they could have got some support behind them, I think they would have been a lot bigger band. But they were on a European label. I forget what label it is, Remedy Records, and I think it was out of Germany. And I mean, they only did so much for them, but they've continued to put records out. They did the next record was Netherworlds, and that was in Netherworlds was what year was that? I think it was 2009, I believe. But Tony Taylor, the lead singer, tragically was killed in a motorcycle accident. And then they had to find a new singer. And they ended up going with a local guy from Raleigh, a guy named Johnny Ani. And they ended up doing the Make It Dark album with him.
Love
and
that
they
record.
did one a couple of years ago, Wars in the Unknown record. Johnny's got a little bit different voice than Tony. Tony sounded. They were getting a lot of back in the early days of them going out. I remember them getting a lot of comparison to Hammerfall, and at the time I remember they just didn't like that. But I was like, man, hey, it's a compliment. Those guys are great. They sound great. Tony even got someone said he sounded like Michael Sweet from Stryper, and Tony took that and he says, hey, I love that guy. He says he's a great singer. I'll take that as a compliment, big time. But yeah, they were just a really, really good traditional metal slash power metal band, and I really feel like that they could have been a bigger band if they had been on a more well known label like Century Media or Nuclear Blast or something.
Sure.
And they're still going. They're kind of a more of a studio project now. They play occasional live shows. They have a side band called Walpurgis. Some of you guys know Jim Hunter, the bass player. Jim's in like 40 bands, so Jim stays busy. So, but yeah, great band, Twisted Tower Dire. If you've never heard of them out there and you're watching this, check them out. Really good band.
Good
Yeah,
pick.
definitely. Yeah. Okay. I feel bad because my picks are nowhere near as obscure as the picks that you guys did. I went with more bands that people know, but I'm just surprised they're not more popular, I guess is the way to put it. And I didn't really go with any bands on the newer side. So, all right, I'm gonna say, and again, I feel bad here because this is way more popular than anything that's been mentioned already, but
Don't worry, my next picks will be with you. So
I think
uh
mine are too.
Max Webster.
Oh yeah, dude.
They're one of these bands that I've been on a real kick with them lately. I discovered Max Webster from Martin Popoff, reading Martin Popoff's books, and they're one of these bands that apparently is really popular in Toronto. I always thought they were popular all over Canada. According to Martin, it's mostly in sort of that Ontario, Toronto
Mhm.
area. I think maybe your average metalhead might recognize the name, might have heard the name. They haven't had anything that got played on the radio here in the States until again reading Martin talk about them. I had kind of heard the name. Rush fans would know the name because Max Webster uses they have a lyricist, Pi Dubois, who's not in the band, and he wrote some lyrics with Rush. I think Tom Sawyer, I think he was involved in those lyrics. Geddy Lee sings on a song, Battle Axe on this record. Uh, but they're just one of these bands that, first of all, the guitar player Kim Mitchell is amazing. It's incredible that he doesn't get you never hear his name mentioned when people talk about, great guitar players.
Yeah.
I think what's going on with them is a couple things. Their records are they're very much like a Frank Zappa, Blue Oyster Cult in the sense that they do all kinds of different things. So you'll get some melodic rock songs. You'll get things that sound very progressive and very songs with lots of guitar in it, so they're kind of all over the map with their sound. Their look, I don't think helps them at all. They go for this very, dressed in their pajamas and, Kim's an amazing guitar player, but he's you know maybe they didn't look quite like the rock stars to get them on MTV or something like that, and it's a shame because again the musicianship is fantastic,
Yeah.
the songs are incredible, the lyrics are fantastic. If you're like a fan of intelligent lyrics like Blue Oyster Cult, who also used outside lyricists, you get that on here. And yeah, they're just one of these weird bands that I'm sure if you're out there and you're in Canada, you're like, what are you talking about? There, everybody knows who Max Webster is. But here in the States, I mean, does anybody ever talk about Max Webster?
No.
Does anybody know who they
Barely.
are? Do
Yeah, the
they?
same people that know Stars and Angel and all those bands
I
know
almost
Max
had
Webster.
stars on my
Lex
list.
Diamond, all that.
Lex
Yeah, I
Yeah.
almost
Diamond,
had
Rex.
stars on
Yeah.
my list because they're another band. But Max Webster has had, how many? Like seven albums, I think, six, seven albums. I don't know, one, two, three, four, five, six albums.
All
76 to 81. So
Yeah.
they didn't really quite get into the 80s fully, so maybe that was part of it. They're from Canada, maybe that didn't help their situation. Maybe if they were from somewhere else, they might have broken a little bit more internationally. But if you've heard the name, and another confusing name too, because you're like, who's Max
yeah,
Webster? There's nobody named Max Webster in the
Violent under
group.
W.
Right. If you've heard the name and you haven't checked them out, I would encourage people. Universal Juveniles, which is this one, is usually what people cite as their best record, and I do really like this. But I personally love A Million Vacations. That's one that I probably my favorite, and then probably Universal Juveniles. I would start there. And Kim Mitchell he went on to have a solo career that was successful in Canada, and his solo records are really great. So if you think of a Zappa Blue Oyster Cult kind of weird crossover like that, I think you'd like Max Webster. Again, probably a name that you've heard, but you just don't know anything about them.
I've heard
Kim,
more about him through Martin Popoff.
Yeah.
you know,
yeah.
Yeah, he's very much the guy that I should have brought it
he
over. I've
champions
got
them
his
for
Max
sure.
Webster book. He's put out a book on Max Webster. He spoke at some sort of Max Webster convention. He was like the highlight Saturday night guest speaker. So yeah, Martin definitely he knows all the ins and outs of Max Webster, which is cool. So
Yeah.
Kim
I'll
Mitchell
tell you
actually
what.
had a kind of not like a big hit down here, but Go for a Soda definitely got some airplay
I
really? Did
remember
you
that.
back
I
in the
was just
'80s.
Yeah.
gonna say
Yeah,
that. Yeah.
here
I
in the
knew who he was.
States?
I knew who he was before I knew who Max Webster was. I found out about Max Webster through a compilation that Music for Nations put out in the '80s called Music for Connoisseurs that had all the kind of bands we were just talking about, and they had a song called "Oh War" on there. But yeah, I remember hearing "Go for a Soda" on the radio. They still play it here in Pittsburgh once in a great while. I mean, and those guys were big up in Canada, man. All their records are gold and platinum.
Yeah.
A Million Vacations platinum, and so it's weird. It's not that far
Yeah.
Mhm.
to Canada. Like from here, it's
Right.
only 5 hours to Toronto. So, but some
And
of those bands just can't make the jump over the border for some
I
reason.
Yeah.
wonder
It's so
too
Yeah.
if I've never heard "Go for Soda" on the radio, and I wonder if it's again you're just close enough to get
Yeah.
to that border that it was able to. Have you guys did you hear "Go for Soda" on the radio?
Not in my
I
neck
didn't
of
hear
the
it on the
woods.
radio. I had it on a compilation record that was had some oddball stuff on. I think it was from Canada, the Metal for Breakfast
Okay.
series. I think it's what it was on. It was on something I had. I
Have
remember.
you ever seen the video for it?
Yeah.
For Go for Soda? It's just classic
Seems
lo-fi.
like I remember seeing that maybe on like Radio 1990 or something like that at a night flight or something.
Yeah,
It was probably
maybe.
something MTV wouldn't play, but USA
Yeah,
Network would play some oddball stuff.
yeah.
Tony, you would probably know for sure, but I swear I had an old Kerrang compilation that had a Max Webster song on it, and I could be completely thinking wrong, but does that even ring a bell to you?
I had some Kerrang. I remember having one that was a double cassette one time, and that may be where I know the song from. It had like a
Okay.
little monster beast on the
It
front
yeah,
screaming with a
exactly.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
like
That may
Me
be the
Aaron was
one.
on there and a
Yeah,
couple other
right.
ones too. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
That may be
Uh,
where I'm thinking about. I had it or had heard it.
Like
yeah.
Welcome to the Metal Zone or something like that.
I can't remember
I don't
That
or
know.
Welcome
something
to the
about
Metal
the
Zone is a different one. That one had like a robot, like the guy that does
Yeah.
those album covers for like Praying Mantis
yeah.
and Budgie and stuff did the cover for that one. I know. Yeah.
I
All
tell
We
you,
know
right.
too
John,
much useless information.
Yeah.
the Cauldron boys, they love Max Webster, and they will
Oh
talk
yeah.
about Kim Mitchell at length with you if you give them the chance.
That's awesome.
Look
Dude,
up
he
Have you
can
ever
play,
seen
man.
have you ever seen that movie Goon? That hockey movie Goon?
I know what you're talking
Yeah.
about,
It's
but I don't
there's a
think I've
scene
seen
in
it.
the scene where there's like, the tough guy, the enforcer. He's lined up next to this, much smaller guy from the other team, and he's calling him names. And at the end of it, as he skates away, he looks at him and goes, "And you probably don't even like Kim Mitchell." It's like the
That's
ultimate
awesome.
insult, as he's skating away.
That's great.
All right, Mike, what do you got for your next pick?
Okay, my next two, I'm fairly sure most people have heard of, but again, to me, it's like, how did these guys not just become much more popular? And my last two are more in the hard rock vein, more a little less than metal, but and Butch knows my love for this band, but I never understood why Brother Kane never really broke through.
Hmm.
They only put three albums out between 93 and 98, and then they kind of faded away. But I mean, talk about a straightforward killer rock and roll band. I mean, the hooks on everything they've ever done are fantastic. And that first album, they actually had some fairly good airplay with Got No Shame and Hard Act to Follow. So there was some buzz about them. And then the second album, Fool Shine On, ended up on the soundtrack of Halloween 4, I think, Curse of Michael Myers. I think it played through the end
Yeah. That
credits.
that was
So
a
there
minor
wasn't,
hit.
yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah,
got a good bit of airplay.
Yeah.
yeah, it really did. And me and my friends were like, these guys are, really good, even though we were into everything, at the speed of light. But we were like, man, Brother Kane, they just got that groove, that drive really good. And then Wishpool came out in 98. And by then, grunge had kind of come and, well, I don't say come and went, but that whole wave came through and it was all alternative. So I don't know if they just got lost in the mix. But for me, Wishpool is my favorite album that they've done. Every single song on there has its own identity and it flows so good. So yeah, that to me, that's another one. It's like, why aren't we talking more about Brother Kane? Because those guys really, really just rock. And they have been active off and on through the years. As a matter of fact, they just played up in Milwaukee, I want to say last year. Might have been even earlier this year. I can't quite remember. So they do still kick around on the tour circuit. But again, man, just a solid rock band. So I just, it's one of those bands that kind of fell through the cracks, and maybe there was some, wrong choices at the forks in the road for them. But I don't know. I wish they would get more attention.
Where are they
They
from?
were a good band.
Yeah,
Alabama.
Alabama.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they I saw them open for somebody when the first album came out, and maybe it was Skinner. I can't remember, but I
They did
saw
go
them
out with
in a
Skinner. Yeah,
club. I saw them in a club when the second album was out, and found out that Damon was a massive Thin Lizzy fan because back then you couldn't just go buy. We didn't. What was that like mid '90s or something?
yeah,
Maybe
yep,
Yeah.
yep,
pre internet, like it is now.
yep.
couldn't just buy shirts. I had a custom made Thin Lizzy shirt, just had the logo on it that a guy made for me. And I had it on the show. And as soon as they came off stage, Damon walked right up to me and says, "I'll give you any shirt at the merch table for that shirt." He goes, "That's my favorite band." I was like, "Not for sale, man. Not going to get it. It's a one of a kind." And I told him this story years later when he was playing with Thin Lizzy or Black Star Riders. And he says, "I vaguely remember that, you know." But yeah, he's been very active. He played with Alice Cooper for several years, and then he got the chance to join Thin Lizzy. He did that, and of course that turned into Black Star Riders and stuff. But yeah, great player, Skinner. Good guy. Yeah, and now he took Gary Ralston's place. That's right. You're right, but sure did the last year or so. Yeah, and Roman, the bass player, has been in Jackal for years.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. I was looking that up too. Yeah, I guess if you look at the single players of the band, they've had pretty successful careers. But it's just too bad that when they came together collectively, that band didn't take off because, man, they smoke.
All right, what do you got, Butch, for your next one?
Well, this is a band that I know we know, and I think people know them. But for me, like when I look at some of the bands that are considered doom metal and are popular, or people like hold up as examples of doom, and I'm like, I can't understand why Orodruin is not humongous in doom. I mean, I kind of get it because their records are so far spread out. I mean, they only have 2 like official full lengths. They've got a bunch of demos they put out. They have an extended EP kind of thing called Claw Tower.
Yeah.
And they don't, they have been overseas a couple times, and they have toured in the US a couple times, but it's a long time. This album came out, I think, initially around 2003. This is Epicurean Mass, which is one of my favorite doom metal records of all time.
Landmark, man, landmark.
Is that a different cover for that record? Did that have a different cover? Or no? Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I think there was a reissue of it at some point that I think was slightly different, but this is the original.
Okay.
This is a vinyl reissue. It didn't initially come out of vinyl. Cruz del Sur put this out a few years back. But man, I mean, these guys are from Rochester, New York, and this is one of those records that Mike and I talked about this before, I think, where I talked about them. That when I first heard the record, I was like, yeah, that's pretty good. And then I saw them play these songs live every night for 2 weeks when Penance toured with them. And man, it just turned my head around on this record. And now it's one of my favorites. And to see them play live is where it's like, holy crap. Yeah. Like John and Nick, when they have the 2 guitar lineup, they've played a bunch of times. They played as a 3-piece for a long time. And then Nick came back to the band. But to see John and Nick play at the same time on stage, it's like having Iommi and Blackmore on stage. John holding down the Iommi side, Nick clearly in the Blackmore camp. And then Mike Paleo is one of the greatest vocalists in the world.
Yeah, he's got that Scott Rieger's like vibe to his voice, which is really cool.
He could do anything. I love his voice, and Mike Losky was great on drums in the band. I'm not quite sure who their drummer is now. I know Kevin Latchaw was playing with them for a little bit, but I think Mike Paleo played drums on their last record. But I love these guys. Again, like, I'm not gonna not trash these bands, but bands like Orchid and The Sword and some of these bands that are, Conan, I mean, they're talented bands, but I don't understand how Orodruin didn't get swept up. I mean, it's too metal or something. Like some of those bands fall more on the stoner side of things, especially The Sword. But man, these guys are just they got everything going for them. And I think if they would just get more records out and be a little bit more
the name is odd. the name is an odd name too to try to remember. You know, if you're just,
Yeah.
I saw this band the other night. It started with O. Yeah.
I think if people can remember band names like Agalok and some of these other bands
Well,
that
yeah.
Orodruin.
Eventually, yeah.
I
Yeah.
see what you're saying, but yeah,
Yeah.
this is a I've loved these guys for years, and you know I'm
Yeah.
glad John has his Blizzara project, and briefly Mike and Nick had a project called Cyrus that was really, it was a three-piece. It was Mike was playing keyboards, Nick played guitar, so Mike was playing keys and holding down the bass on the keyboards with a drummer. Was Mike Waskey playing drums for Cyrus too?
Mike was in that because I almost had Cyrus up in Milwaukee for one of the fest too, and then I forget what happened there, but yes,
But yeah,
as far as I remember, Mike was playing drums for Cyrus.
Yeah, they were killer too. But yeah, definitely if you like doom metal, like especially like traditional doom metal,
Yeah.
Trouble, Vitus, Pentagram, Cathedral, like all of that stuff, Orodruin. You have to check it
Yeah.
out. Both their records are killer.
100%.
If you could find the demos online and stuff, also great. Claw Tower is great.
Nice.
I think what really makes them stand out is, I mean, you cannot understate the genius of John Gallo, number one. The other thing too, collectively as a band, is they don't just recycle the riff. Where like a lot of the bands you just mentioned, Butch, they're just recycling riffs we've all heard a million times. I mean, don't get me wrong, sounds good, compositions are good, but Orodruin has always been able to, and this goes across, you know, all the singles and the demos and everything. If you've heard their completely collective works, they've always kept things different and original and new. And it's like just when you thought you couldn't hear another riff a different way, they do it, and you're like, God damn, that's fucking good.
Yeah, you can hear
bottomless
their
well of riffs.
influences. You can hear the influences, but it doesn't sound like they're just copying and pasting, which a
Exactly.
lot of those bands that
Yep.
Butch mentioned, it's like their influences are there. You can hear them, but they're sort
Right.
of twisting it around and doing other things with it, which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, Tony, what do you got?
Next up, I've got Lääz Rockit.
Yeah,
They
I
were
almost picked
Oakland,
them actually.
California. They formed in 1983 in Oakland. They're kind of considered to be part of the Bay Area thrash movement of the early 80s there. Debut album was 1984's City's Gonna Burn. And these guys mixed like traditional heavy metal with some speed metal and thrash elements, and had some really good stuff. Second album's No Stranger to Danger from '85. And they kind of had some like custom costumes and stuff made. Then it kind of made them look almost kind of like a glammy band in a way with that. But they kind of
100%.
dropped that by the time they did the next record, which was Know Your Enemy, and just really good guitar driven, speed metal, thrash metal by that time. Great singer, Michael Coons, just an excellent vocalist. They did a EP where they did Holiday in Cambodia and released that as an EP. And they ended up, most people know from two songs. If you don't know anything else by Lääz Rockit, you know Fire in the Hole off the Annihilation Principle album here. And then they did the song Leatherface on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3 soundtrack. Both of those songs, Fire in the Hole and Leatherface, got a lot of airplay on MTV's Headbangers Ball. But the band never really did anything. I don't think they did a whole lot of touring. Like I know they went overseas a little bit, but they didn't tour like all over. I don't ever remember them coming over to the East Coast much. I don't know if you guys ever saw them in any form or fashion.
I never got to see them.
Nope.
They ended up in '91. They did Nothing Sacred album. That was it. The band had actually gone through a pretty major lineup change by then. And then I think it was 2008. They reformed and did an album called Left for Dead, and they put that out through the Blistering Records or whatever is the label. They were on Enigma and various labels back in the their early days and stuff. But I mean, they got good distribution. You could find their records everywhere. And so they had catchy songs. They were really good. I just never could figure out why they never crossed over and got bigger. Maybe they burned out too fast. I don't know. But but yeah, they were a good band. A couple of the guys sadly have passed away now. I know the rhythm section, the bassist and the drummer have both passed away in over the last decade or so. But yeah, but Michael, God, man, he had such a great voice. It's just a good thrash singer, you know. But they had a couple of songs that had some slower parts in it, like almost ballady type stuff, and he could really, really sing. Yeah, good band though. Lääz Rockit. If you hadn't never checked them out, check them out. Weird spelling too. Laaz. I think they got it from a. I was reading something about they got it from like some movie with Lääz Rockit. I think it was from a Rambo movie or something. I can't remember now, but something like that.
Cool.
But yeah, they were a cool band.
Nice.
Know Your Enemy. That's one of my favorite albums. I love that record.
Yeah,
That's
Know
I
Your
bought
Enemy
that.
is probably my favorite record by them, actually.
Yep.
I bought that just for that album cover. That was one of those ones I saw. I saw at the store, and I'm like, I love this cover, and I'm like, I have to. I never heard them. I knew of them. I'd see the ad for. I can remember seeing the ad for the first record.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that cover. I bought that.
Yeah,
That
the
great.
character there they had a character with the Lääz Rockit, the rocket launcher there. They had Sting, the wrestler Sting
Yep.
played the character in the Fire in the Hole video.
Oh, nice.
Because Sting looked a lot like that character at the time before
Yeah.
he did his whole goth crow rip off thing, you know.
You know, if I remember right too, those guys played quite like headlining shows over like Metallica and Exodus at
Yeah.
one point too.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
think I got a flyer around the
They
corner over
talk
there.
pretty highly of them if you've ever seen those Bay Area
Oh yeah.
documentaries of what about the Bay Area Thrashers. I mean, they're very well respected band, and they show the old flyers, and just
Yeah.
like Mike said, you'll see flyers with them headlining over Metallica and Slayer and just so forth.
Yeah. Good stuff. Good pick.
Nice.
That is a good pick.
All right, this next band for me, I know that we know this band, and I think people that are really into the doom and the stoner scene know this band. But I think the general metal at large, this band flies under the radar. And considering a lot of people would consider them to sort of be the maybe after Black Sabbath, the godfathers of stoner rock, Kyuss. Again, we know this band, but considering consider this to be a masterpiece, I absolutely love this record.
Definitely.
Considering a lot of people cite them with being the band that sort of kicked off the whole stoner rock, the desert rock thing. Everybody knows, and a bunch of the members went on other things like Josh Homme and Nick Oliveri went on to Queens of the Stone Age. I think if you said Queens of the Stone Age to just a general metalhead that doesn't know any doom or stoner, they would recognize Queens of the Stone Age. And this is one of those bands that everybody they get name dropped constantly by other bands, like, about how amazing they are, how influential these records are. But to the general metal public, people that maybe don't only follow maybe death metal or thrash or something like that, they're just sort of this unknown band or underground band. And they were on what was their record label? They were on a fairly decent record label. This is I don't know what this is. I can't read the
They were
thing
on a
here.
major for Sky Valley, and
Yeah. So it wasn't like they were just putting out demos or something.
What year was the first album?
Wretch was
Wretch.
91. Yeah,
Mhm.
Wretch was 91, Blues for the Red Sun 92, Welcome to Sky Valley 94, and The Circus Leaves Town 95. And this is maybe kind of a theme with some of us have mentioned this with some of these bands. It's a timing thing.
Yeah.
Like, again, early 90s, tough time for heavy music. I know that the underground death metal and stuff like that was kicking off and really happening.
Grunge.
But for this stuff that was, yeah, grunge was happening. But and even though some grunge people name drop Kyuss
Yeah,
too.
big
So
time.
again,
I was really that's surprising that they didn't kind of get lumped in with the grunge stuff there for a while, you know?
Yeah, they're exactly like to me when I hear early Soundgarden, it reminds me of Kyuss. So yeah, they're one of these
Sure.
weird
Yeah.
bands that maybe if they were from Seattle, they would have rode that
They're
wave. Maybe if these records had come out a little bit later, they would have they would have rode the stoner. Like when you mentioned the Sword and bands like that, you're like, how does a band like that become as popular as they do, and a band like Caius is
mhm.
relegated to well, if you know type of band. So yeah, it's one of those weird things. Another band that when I discovered them through Martin Popoff, when I got his original collector's guide to heavy metal. I don't know if you guys know that, and if you
Mhm.
remember that, it was like kind of
Yeah.
a big, thick. I think it came out in like 97 or
Yeah,
something
I've
like
got
that.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
got that when
It's got
it
different volumes.
yeah, he did go and put them in different volumes, but the original one was like this, big, thick uh,
Bible.
Look
book.
like a phone book.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep, there it is. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that was like 97, 98, something like that, right, Butch? I don't know if there's a year on the
It was
inside there.
around that whenever let's see.
I got the CD in the back of that, Butch.
It was,
I don't have the CD in the back anymore. That's where I found out about the Gathering and Tiamat and
yeah, Tiamat, they were
um
on that CD that was in
Yeah.
there.
Sentence was on here. So
Yeah, but that turned me on to like
Iced Earth.
a bunch of things. That's how I discovered through Martin, I discovered Caius. I
Yep.
discovered Trouble, because Martin was praising all these, you gotta just, this heavy Sabbath thing. And as soon as I'd see that, I was like, okay, I gotta check this out. And this was early days of the internet. So
97.
97. I mean, that's
Yeah.
like dead early internet. So I remember getting it at like a Borders or a Barnes and Noble. And this was before the internet I mean, the internet was out, but you didn't have all these websites cataloging bands and stuff like that the way you can Google things now. So that book was really invaluable to me and turned me on to. And Caius was one of those bands because Martin just praised them, especially Blues for the Red Sun. He praised
What a
that up and
classic.
down. So yeah, absolutely. So thank you, Martin. You're out there
You
listening.
know, I remember when I first started hearing about them, really was had a friend that was into a lot of doom stuff. And there was that period when Ozzy did his last show supposedly back in I guess 93, and they did the Sabbath reunion. Then they ended up doing that Nativity in Black record. And all of a sudden all this Sabbath love was coming out. These people were
Hmm.
discovering Sabbath for the first time. So you see you had labels like Columbia signed up, Cathedral. They signed the Obsessed to put out the Church
Hmm.
Within, and I'm really surprised that Caius just didn't get kind of lumped more into the grunge thing that was still happening and just
Right.
become a huge band. But it's like you said, if they had been from Seattle, they probably would have been huge.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they
That's
were on Elektra Records. So
Yeah.
how Elektra, if Elektra couldn't break them, I don't know, man.
mm,
Yeah, it's just a weird,
timing.
thing. Sometimes,
Yeah,
yeah, sometimes it's just timing, where you're from, because all these guys, another case of like where one of these guys went on to Fu Manchu, right? And I don't
Eagles of
know.
Death Metal.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So, all right, Mike, what do you got for your last pick?
All right, my last one. I'm about to find out if I'm justified in saying more people should talk about it or if people truly don't know because there's a very thick connection with this band in my particular area. But again, these guys had 8 studio albums, but they really kind of hit, lightning in a bottle with 90 and 93 with Fly Me Courageous. And then the
Mhm.
Smoke came out after that. But Driving and Crying,
They
man,
have 8 albums out?
they have 8 albums. And believe it or
Wow.
not, they've got 5 live albums as well.
When did their first
Wow.
And
record come out? Do you know? Because I just
um,
associate them as like a mid 90s type of.
Shot to
I
hell.
did. I didn't write. Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. Did you see the documentary on Driving and Crying? Because they
Yeah.
talk about that quite a bit. Yeah, it's really
Yeah.
good. John, I would have to look up. I'm not 100% sure when that first one came out. I want to say like 83, I think the first
Wow.
one. But
Their
yeah,
first
but
album was 83.
I could be
I'm looking
completely
right
So
now, but
so the
off wrong.
record that had Fly Me Courageous on it
That's
wasn't their first
1990.
album?
No,
That
this
was
is
their
19.
that wasn't their first album.
86
No,
was their first
Wow.
86.
I
album.
always
Okay.
thought that was their first album. Wow.
Nope.
Scared
Nope.
Yeah.
but Smarter, 86.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fly Me
And then
Courageous came out in 91.
90. Was it 90 or 91? Is it
91.
91? Okay. And then Smoke came out
January
in
of 91.
93. So Driving and Crying always kind of bordered on a little bit of an acoustic driven rock band. But then right between 91, 93, when Fly Me Courageous and then the next album was Smoke, they were rocking it hard. And,
Hmm.
they had video for Fly Me Courageous. It was on fairly good rotation on MTV, but,
What a
Build a
riff.
Fire, the end. Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
dude.
God, that's a great riff in Fly Me Courageous.
But Kevin Kinney, the lead singer, is originally from Milwaukee. So they had a real big connection to my area around here. And he was always really good about coming back. And Driving and Crying played around here like a lot. And this got airplay on every Milwaukee station. And I know that throughout, Wisconsin, Chicago, they got fairly good airplay. What the reach was outside of my area, I'm not 100% sure. But they were making it. They were kind of starting to break through that mainstream. And then in 93, the big single was Turn It Up or Turn It Off the Smoke album. And then the title track kind of became a little bit of a secondary single, which kind of kept them rolling. But again, when we were talking about timing wise, what was the flavor of the day at that time? It definitely was not this. So they kind of dropped out of the public eye, and they kept on kicking it though. They put out a couple albums after that. Like I said, there's like 5 different live albums that they've got going. Um, but since then, they're still touring. Kevin does the Kevin Kinney band, and then they also have Driving and Crying. So they're still out and about, and they do quite a fair amount of touring. And there's a really really good documentary about Driving and Crying too. So if you're not real familiar with it, I recommend viewing the documentary. It's really
I
cool.
believe it's on Tubi. I think you can see it on Tubi for
Yeah, it's
free, I believe.
Tubi or Pluto. It's like one of those
Yeah.
two. Yeah.
They
So,
play
but
through here. They come through here like every year.
well,
You
yeah,
know,
they're
they're
based
they're
out of
playing a
Georgia
they're
now.
playing a yeah, they're playing a small little just a little tiny place that they an art center near where I
Okay,
live, like 15 minutes from here in I
no
think
kidding.
January. We'll go try to see them.
Actually, I
Wow.
looked up tour dates because I always made a point. I saw them, we have Summerfest up here, and they played that several times. And, they would come back and they play some of the smaller theaters. And then as the popularity shifted and, the public, but they still would come back. They'd play all the really large county fairs. So we had a chance to see them a lot. And they were always really good. But yeah, just another one. If you listen to like The Innocent off of this, that's another killer riff. Build a Fire is catchy. That whole album, and Smoke is just Whiskey Soul Woman is such a good song. But yeah, it's a case of timing, or it's just a case of there was a lot more to choose from at the time. I'm not real sure, but I always thought that these guys were just criminally overlooked and underappreciated. Such a good band.
They're another one of those bands that you really don't know what category to put them in. They
Very
got
much
hard
so.
rock songs. They got roots rock songs. When Fly
Yeah.
Me Courageous came out, you were on the tail end of the glam rock
Yep.
thing. So
Exactly.
they were showing them on Headbangers Ball. That video got
Yeah.
played on Headbangers Ball.
And even if you listen to some of their later albums too, they really start to embrace a little bit more of the countryside of their music. And I think Kevin's always been kind of rooted in a little bit of country folk, but he always injected that into good rock riffs. So,
I
but
see
yeah,
their name come up a lot, and when people are talking about Southern rock bands, which I never got with them, but I
yeah,
haven't listened to their whole catalog. So, but it does come up. So
yeah,
that makes sense if they have that going on in there.
yeah. And especially like Kevin's solo material, he weighs heavily on that genre too. So I can see where that would be brought up.
All right, what do you got, Butch?
All right. So this next band, I just found out about these guys through The first time I heard them, we played. Argus was playing over in Ireland, um, and we played up in Belfast. And this band was one of the bands that um, opened for us, and they're killer. It's a band called Terminus. They're from Belfast, Ireland. Um, I technically they're still active, but their last album came out in 2019. This is the second album, A Single Point of Light. You really should take the plastic covers off so that it doesn't reflect like that. But um, yeah, it's the lineup is they're down to like technically the lineup is two members. Wrong site. It's Dave Gillespie, who on the albums now at this point plays everything. He everything from the drums, the guitars, bass, and then James Beatty is their singer. Um, the other guys that were in the bands at one point were Dave McCollum on bass, Paul Duffy on guitar, and Gavin Coulter on guitar. First of all really good guys too, man. Like super good guys. Dave is a great songwriter. I think he and I used to correspond a lot through Facebook and email, and um, it does take a while for he's real nitpicky. Like when he's putting these records together, it takes him a while to get to what he wants. But man, these records are so good, and it's kind of like if you like, it fits in with bands like Solstice and the UK epic metal band and Twisted Tower Dire, that kind of thing. They fit in well with my old band Argus. It's like just real good. If you like shit like Maiden and Thin Lizzy and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of great double guitar work. I hear a little bit of Fates, like classic Fates Warning in here, but I hear like a lot of like Solstice and TTD in here, which is no big surprise. I know Dave's a fan. This is a really cool album cover too. The way they did this, the cover's like it's hard to see the. Oh, there you can see that art there.
Wow.
But like cool. It's cool. They put this thing over top of it, which is kind of neat. Like this sleeve that it came in. Yeah, they're great. I love James's voice. He's got like he can get up to some good notes, but has a real robust like baritone kind of voice. The songs are just like so. I hear some of these riffs, and I'm just if I would hear the riffs in isolation, Dave actually sent me he would while they were working on this, he'd send me bits and pieces of stuff they're working on, and I'd hear that stuff and be like, oh my god, like I can't wait to hear this all come together. The only thing with these dudes is the band split. Three of the guys. It ended up just being Dave and James, and they don't play live anymore. They stopped playing live. I know Dave is a family. I'm pretty sure James is a family too. So I guess that probably would have hurt their progress. Like this was on Cruz del Sur. I'm not sure what label this is on. Horror Records put out the vinyl for this. I want to say Stormspell maybe did the CD of it, but man, just a killer band that I wish they were one of those bands I just wish they would do more. We're going on 7 years since the last record. And one of those bands, like I think they're worth still mentioning, like because if you could still find these, they're definitely worth getting. I really do think that people that like epic, new wave of traditional metal, but on the epic side, would really like these dudes a lot. There's the musicianship is great, the songwriting is killer, riffs for days, a lot of good double guitar work, and like I said, good dudes too. So maybe if more people go out find these records and nag them, maybe they'll do. Maybe we can get them to do something again. And if you get a hold of Dave, tell him that he owes Butch a return email. It's been a while.
Nice. All right, Tony, what do you got for your last pick?
My last pick, I'm going with Black and Blue.
Oh, a good
Oh,
one. I was
I
thinking
know,
about them
you
too,
know,
Tom.
Yeah.
um, really good, melodic hard rock band. They formed in 1981 in Portland, Oregon. They eventually moved out to LA because they knew that's where everything was happening then. They got their Chains Around Heaven was on I think the third pressing of Metal Massacre, the very first Metal Massacre. And good, just super hard, really heavy rock band, like it had melodic edge to it. Debut album, they got signed to Geffen Records. And the first album was produced by Dieter Dirks, who did a lot of work with the Scorpions and all, and it
Dita.
came out in 1984. And I just remember this coming out. Hold On to 18 was the lead off
Yeah.
single. MTV
Yeah.
played the crap out of that song. I mean, and it is a great song. And then they ended up there's actually a Hold On to 18 promo single there. Then they second album was they worked with I think it was Bruce Fairbairn did the second album. And they kind of lost their edge with this. It's called Without Love. Came out in 1985, and it was a lot more melodic than the first record. It just wasn't as hard driving as that first one. I think a lot of the people that liked heavier metal, because at that time period when that first record came out, everything wasn't so many subgenres. It was just kind of
Right.
heavy metal, and there was not the glam bands and all this different stuff. But by this period, Bon Jovi had happened, and Poison was getting Poison hadn't come out yet. I guess they did another year, but the Bon Jovi thing had happened, and I think they really wanted to clean up their sound, have some radio hits with this. They had a song, Miss Mystery was the single from
Yeah.
this. They had a song called Nature of the Beach on here that was on the Vision Quest movie soundtrack. Of course, you look at their picture, they kind of went more. They got more of a glammy look
Yeah.
here on the second album. I saw them on this tour. They opened for Kyuss. And that's where most people know the name Black and Blue from. If they do know the name, it's because Tommy Thayer, the guitar player, went on to join Kyuss. He is Fake Freely, and he ended up becoming the second spaceman, and after the late great Ace Frehley. But Tommy worked with Kyuss for years too. But before that, but yeah, they then more Kyuss connection when they did their third album. This was Nasty Nasty. Gene Simmons produced this album, as well as their follow-up album In Heat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that In Heat was 88. And after that, I mean, they just never really had any other hits after that. They released a single off the Nasty Nasty record for I'll Be There For You. And it was a Jonathan Cain, the guy from Journey, the keyboard player. He wrote that song. Really, really poppy commercial song that could have took them to another level, but it just didn't happen for them. They were on Geffen Records. I mean, definitely had the power behind them to have hits, and Geffen pushed the albums. I mean, I collect Black and Blue stuff. I got numerous singles and stuff radio singles and stuff that they put out. So it's not like they weren't getting promoted. It's just something about them, and I think it really it comes down to timing. We spoke about timing. They really came out right before the whole glam thing and the hair metal thing is which we didn't call it back then. They call it that now, but it was the glammy thing. But bands like Bon Jovi were having massive hits and stuff, and they just didn't fall into that for some reason. I actually met John Kolodner once when I worked over at Sanctuary Records. He was there hanging out one day. He was doing some work with them. We were just talking about bands, and I said something about Black and Blue, and he goes, "Man," he goes, "if I had held them back another year, they'd have been bigger than Bon Jovi." And so
Yeah.
I don't know, but I would have been 85, but who knows? But yeah, they were really, really good band. They broke up after the In Heat album. Of course, like we said, Tommy went on to Tommy worked for Kyuss. Tommy was in a tribute band, a Kyuss tribute band, and then playing Ace, and then he ended up going to work for Kyuss, and he eventually joined Kyuss. But the song Nasty Nasty from the Nasty Nasty album is basically the song Domino.
Yeah.
Kyuss ended up ripping that off later on, a few years later on the Revenge album, which Tommy does get a co-write on that. But they did get back together and did a record in 2011 called Hell Yeah. and they do play shows. They play on some festivals and stuff. Like I've seen them on M3, and I've seen them. I saw them open for LA Guns up at Jack's in Virginia one time, and I mean, but it's just the singer, the drummer, and the bassist. The two guitar players are different in the band now. Of course, Tommy doesn't have the time to do it, but I'm not sure. Aren't they? Did I hear? Are they taking place? Are they taking part in that Kiss thing in Vegas coming up? Possibly.
Yeah. I just watched an interview with there's a really good interview with Jamie St. James that a dude named the Hair Metal Guru did with him that's really has a lot of information about Black and Blue, and they're playing that thing in Vegas. They didn't do a physical format of it yet, but they have that single, those two songs out you can get online, which are really good. They were good
songs.
Yeah, 84, 85 period. They finished them up. Now they're killer. Like,
yeah, they were just a really good hard rock band that it really should have gone somewhere. It's like you were talking about the interview with Jamie. I mean, I've seen various interviews with him through the years where he does talk about how things what should have been and how things were put in place a certain way and probably should have really happened for him, but it just didn't for some reason. But most people, you just never hear anybody talking about them anymore. It's funny. I was at the Cannibal Corpse Municipal Waste Show here in Raleigh a couple weeks ago, and I walked out to the outside area, the smoking area, and there's a guy that looks like he's about 17, 18 years old sitting there, and I'm going, does his shirt say Black and Blue? And I got closer, and I went, it does say Black and Blue. And I said, you got a Black and Blue shirt? And he goes, oh yeah, man, I went to see him somewhere. He told me. And then turns out he told me who his dad was, and I know his dad, so that's when you really feel old. But but his dad loves Black and Blue, so that makes sense. Yeah.
And and it's fun. It's just goes to show you, like, they had that Hold On to 18 got played like crazy on MTV. So they did have some songs that got played. Yet, unless they're probably on a package tour, like if they rolled into your town, just them, where would they be playing at? Probably a small club.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not like Kyuss. Kyuss never had a song that got played like crazy on MTV or anything like that. Yeah. But they had, songs that did get played, and Gene Simmons produced one of their records, and all of a sudden they were on a big label and everything. And it just goes to show you that, whatever it is, it's just luck. There's just a lot of luck involved in bands making it and being successful.
They just weren't as good looking as Bon Jovi, I guess. I mean, that comes into.
I always thought of him as like kind of a twisted sister, because the singer had the big blonde hair.
I remember people used to say that Jamie looked like Dee Snider, and you're right, yeah.
Well, Geffen Records, for whatever inexplicable reason, like instead of putting out more singles and pushing more videos from the records, they would put out one single and then rush the band, tell the band, now it's time to get back in the studio now. Like they put them in, they made them go back in and do Without Love, like instead of really pushing that first one more, which was selling well. I think it did about 300,000.
And they were huge in Japan. And they were huge in Japan off that first. Have you ever watched that live from Japan that they released?
Killer.
I got
they're doing songs from the second album with different lyrics because they had to have material because they only had one album out. But it shows them arrive at the airports, and there's all the little Japanese girls with their little black and blue dolls they've made and given to them. And I'm just like, this is crazy, But yeah, of course, everybody was big in Japan. So
you know what else is really
a lot
good
of bands
too?
did videos then. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, that's okay. I was just gonna you go, bud.
No, you go. I was just gonna say, from that time period, it was like them, and there's this great live video of Queensryche, and Jafria too was big, did their live video over there too. Yeah. That's all I have.
I just wanted to say, I don't know, I can't remember if it was actually packaged as a reunion, but that live album, One Night Only or One Night Live, I think
killer.
That's right, yeah.
So good. I think they really, really captured The
Yeah.
energy, yeah, such a
Mm.
good live album, man.
Yeah. And that was in their hometown, I think, where they
Yeah,
recorded that at in Portland. Yeah.
yeah, I agree though. That first album absolutely smokes, and then like you said, Tony, everything past that, they lost their edge, just like you said.
Hmm.
I remember because
Had
we
good songs.
played.
They had good songs on the other albums, but they didn't have
No,
the
it was
edge that
super
that first album
polished.
had.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, that first album though, holy cow, so good. Good pick.
All right, my
Good
last
song.
pick. Everybody knows the band that this guy's from. This is one of the most influential bands in heavy metal. You'd say they invented heavy metal. But I feel people don't know about Bill Ward and his
Yeah.
solo career.
Hmm.
I'm not going to go too much in depth into this because Darren and I, the most recent episode of our podcast, Into the Void of Black Sabbath podcast, we covered When the Bow Breaks. We weren't sure if we were going to cover this. I've been a fan of Bill's stuff ever since his first solo record, Ward One, along the way. I think there's a bunch of things going on with Bill's solo career. This album, his first solo record came out in 1990. It's got a whole bunch of guest people on it, including Ozzy, Zach Wild's on here, Bob Daisley's on here, Jack Bruce is on here. Uh, they had a video for the one song that Ozzy sings in here. One of the songs that Ozzy sings, "Bombers Can Open Bombs, Bombay."
Bombay's. Yeah.
Yeah, Bombay's. Then it was 7 years for when the Bow Breaks came out. This was released on Cleopatra, uh, to little to no fanfare. It was independently released again with a different cover. Uh, but this album, and he has another one that came out in 2015 called Accountable Beasts, which I have somewhere. I couldn't find it. So there's a huge gap between Bill's solo stuff. It's very far from, out of all the original four guys, the things that they've done outside of Sabbath, this is the least Sabbath sounding. This one a little bit because Ozzy's on it. You can kind of connect it to Black Sabbath. This album, you can't. This is not a metal record. I don't even think I would really even consider this a hard rock record. But I just think that Bill is an absolute genius. I love Bill's solo stuff. I think it's a crime that more people don't know about it. If you go to listen to this record, again, the version that's out now just has a picture of Bill on like a 70s picture of Bill on the cover. You have to clear your memory banks of Black Sabbath. This has nothing to do with Black Sabbath. If anything, I would compare this to, it has some Pink Floyd vibes to it. This has the Pink Floyd vibes, but it has it in a Roger Waters solo vibe to it. But this is just an album that has grown on me over the years. Accountable Beasts is great. I just think that Bill is like the forgotten genius of Black Sabbath. He's kind of like George Harrison. You know, Paul and John got all the attention, and then George Harrison goes solo, and you realize what an amazing songwriter George was. Bill doesn't even play drums on this record. He sings. But the arrangements on this is a headphone record, as is this one, as is Accountable Beasts. You put it on, and the arrangements, the mood, again, in a Roger Waters kind of conceptual way. I encourage people to seek this out, seek out Bill's solo stuff, listen to our podcasts on both these records. And Darren was a latecomer to this. He really didn't like this when he first heard it, put it on the shelf until we decided to do the podcast on it. And he just fell in love with this. I've been in love with this record for basically since it came out. But you really got to sort of take it for what it is. But yeah, just always felt that out of all the Sabbath guys, Bill's stuff flies the most under the. Most people don't even realize that Bill Ward has even put out any solo stuff. So yes, please check those records out. Check out our podcast on those two records where we go really in depth into those two albums. So All
Yeah, he
right.
didn't really tour or anything like Weezer
No,
toured
right.
with
He
the
never
GZR and
toured.
stuff.
There were huge
Yeah.
gaps between these records. They went out of print really quickly. So the catalog is just really messy. Amazing that nobody has reissued this stuff. Apparently, he's sitting on a record called Beyond Aston. Uh, he can't find anybody to release it, which I find maybe he just can't
Oh,
find the right contract, somebody who pay him what he needs to be paid to release it or something. But yeah, again, it's just he's sort of this, in my opinion, he's like kind of again like Roger Waters, this conceptual genius. Roger doesn't necessarily even play bass a lot of times on some of his stuff, but he's just this genius. And when the bow breaks, it's just so personal, man. Like you hear some of these lyrics, and I would love to hear or interview Bill about these solo records, and especially this one. It just feels so because Bill had struggles with alcohol and drugs and everything, and this record just sounds like he's just sort of opening up his soul to you. It's really really moving when you get into it and you sit down with it. So. All right.
Nice.
There you go. There's our picks for some bands and albums you guys need to check out. Criminally underrated bands and albums. Maybe we'll do a criminally overrated albums and
You
bands,
want to get
right?
death threats to all of us?
Yeah, people love negativity, man. They love negativity.
Let's do it. I'm in.
Bring on the negativity. So yeah, maybe that'll be our next topic. We'll see. But all right, thanks to all the guys here. Make sure you check out For the Sake of Heaviness with Butch and Mike. Make sure you check out Tony Dio's Metal Emporium, their YouTube channels. Check out Into the Void, a Black Sabbath podcast. Kicked in the Teeth, an AC/DC podcast that I do with Martin Popoff. We name drop Martin a bunch of times. And my A Pod Somewhere in Time, Iron Maiden podcast that I do with my Swedish buddy Matthias. So plenty of stuff to keep you busy if you miss us between these sometimes I know it can be a long stretch between the dudes episodes. You miss us, but hey, you got us on you can catch us on all kinds of different ways, different channels, different things here. So all right, so we see you at the next Dudes Talking Metal. Make sure you stay heavy, stay metal.